My financial acumen has always been the weakest part of my entrepreneurial journey. So I have to surround myself with mentors, bookkeepers, corporate accounting firms, financial analysts to help me interpret, because that's not my strength.
You'd be amazed how many entrepreneurs don't understand that. They think if you build it, they will come, and it's just not true.
You talked about the 4 pillars to growth and success, and the juxtaposition of the 4 reasons people don't scale. Do you mind outlining those and why companies or why people struggle to embrace them? Brian, welcome to Outsource to Profits. If you don't mind, tell the audience who you are and what you do, and then we'll get into the story of the week.
Hey, Jamie, thanks for having me on the show today. I appreciate it. My background in the last 35 years has been 10 different startups, 5 different industries, 2 venture capital exits, 1 private equity exit, 1 private exit, which is another venture capital or private equity. Today, I own a small chain of restaurants. I own a real estate company. I do business consulting in the $2 to $30 million range. I sit on city council in my hometown, executive board member of the Tech Alpharetta Group. Very diverse background.
What we're going to be talking about is the reasons that companies scale or the reasons they don't scale. I've owned 3 agencies. 2 have gone to scale. My first one and now my third one, private equity backed. But I can tell you, as a guy who had subscale businesses, I'll tell you a quick story. When I started my sales training, sales consulting arena or practice, all I had ever thought about was helping my local Toronto small to medium business, primarily SaaS software companies, with a topic that was called Sales 2.0, or it was the emergence of inside sales. And so I went into the market and I came to realize that my generalist approach, and I wanted to be a generalist to all things B2B business development, because I was so worried that I would miss a piece of business. So my website looked like a Chinese menu, and I was offering anything that would attract somebody that was looking for some form of business development. I couldn't get that business over $500,000 for the first 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
But then I saw around a corner and I saw this idea that would be what I called social selling. And I remember calling my business partner. I was at the American Institute of Inside Sales Professionals, AAISP, event in Chicago. And I called my business partner. I said, we are going to cease operations on all the Chinese menu. And we are going to focus on this thing called social selling. And there was a lot of F-bombs on the other side of the call. He was like, this is the dumbest idea. The word I invented, like it didn't have a thing yet. But I was convinced that niching down was going to be our explosive growth. So with that, Brian, you talked about the 4 pillars to growth and success, and the juxtaposition of the 4 reasons people don't scale. Do you mind outlining those and why companies or why people struggle to embrace them?
Yeah, it's so funny, Jamie. Listen to you talk. You sound like Dan Martell and Alex Hermosi wrapped up into one guy there.
Dan and I were skiing last week at Baldface. Yes.
Okay, so Mr. SaaS and Mr. Niche down, because that's where the money's at. So I love that. There's the 4 keys, I call it, and we call it the 4 keys of success, or the same 4 keys to failure. And they kind of start like this. And I talk to founders all the time, and one of the primary questions I ask them is, why should anybody buy your product? And why should they buy it from you? Too many people get into business and they create a commodity that's available anywhere, anytime from anybody, and then they struggle to scale and they can't figure out why. And the primary thing we ask them is, why should they buy it from you? If they can buy your product from anybody else in any place else, then you are in a price-driven down market, and you're going to drive yourself right into bankruptcy at some point. You have to create something unique enough for the market, whether it's you, your personality, your niche, your social, your marketing, whatever, that's going to bring people to you over bring them to the competition. So that's a huge one. And you'd be amazed how many entrepreneurs don't understand that. They think if you build it, they will come, and it's just not true. If you build it and you make it unique, they will come. That's the truth on that first point. The second one is, I see too many founders, especially in this 2 to 30 million range, really more in the 2 to 10, who haven't completely learned how to delegate inside their own business. And so you have founders or executives that are busy trying to do everything for everybody and answer every question. And I always know we have a problem when they say, well, if I do it, it just gets done faster, so I'm going to do it. Or I'm going to do it better. Or I'm afraid a problem will happen if I let somebody else do it. And they end up spending all of their time doing $20 an hour tasks and not doing what they should be doing, which is creating a business that is able to grow. So you've got to learn to delegate. You've got to do what you do best. Backfill all the administrative, the minutia, anything you're not strong at. Backfill that with other people, and you go do what you do best. Be an entrepreneur. That's a big one. The third one is numbers. And here's another one. You'd be surprised how many founders and entrepreneurs, again, in this 2 to 30 million range, do not understand how to do financial analysis. And I've talked with companies that they've got all the data in the world, and they've got just, so much data, but they don't know how to analyze it. And they don't know how to go in and parse that data out and see what that data is telling them. I always tell people that your data, your P&L is a crystal ball. And if I can look at your data over a period of time, I can determine where you were 2 years ago. I can look at where you are today. I can break down your core metrics to tell me how you got from there to here. And I can use that data to predict where your business is going to go, because data tends to flow in patterns, and that patterns aren't going to change unless you change something in the pattern. So if your business is not growing, it's because you haven't changed the data inside the patterns to make it grow. Okay. So if you want to know how to grow, we look at your history, figure out where you came from, where you are today. And then we start making changes in those core metrics to change the pattern into the future. And most people don't understand how to do that. That's one of the biggest things I do in my consulting practice is data analysis for people. So that's 3. And the last one is this, and I'm going to tie all those 3 together. If your business isn't growing the way you want it to, if it's not scaling the way you want it to, if it's not as profitable as you want it to be, the problem is probably you. And that's because you don't know how to do it. If you've never built and scaled a business the way that you want to build and scale your business, then you don't know how to do it. And all you're doing is guessing, shooting in the dark, and your chances of success are probably mid to low. And the example I always tell people is this, and I use, I've got an Apple phone here, Jamie, right? And Apple is run by a guy named what? Tim Cook. Tim Cook's probably one of the smartest guys in the country, maybe the world. He runs one of the biggest companies in the world. And yet Tim Cook has a board of directors, much like every major company, that comes in every quarter and sits down with them, and they get to the big table and they get their Jimmy John subs and they break open and they say, okay, Tim, tell us your problems. And he says, man, I got problems with this and that, and Foxconn's an issue, and China's a problem, and taxes are a problem, and this new president's threatened to throw tariffs on us. And all these 12 people on the board, they say, well, based on our experience, and by the way, we're not even in, the phone business or whatever. Based on our experience and what we've done, these are our suggestions, Tim. And this is what we think you should do. And Tim takes all of their suggestions and he leaves. And then Tim has a personal coach that comes in and says, okay, Tim, let's talk about it. How you feeling? What's going on with the business? Your employees, your executives. And Tim takes all of this advice from all these people and he builds Apple Computer. And I ask entrepreneurs all the time, if Tim Cook needs 12 or 13 people to help him build his business, what in the world makes you think you're going to do it all by yourself? Wouldn't you rather have somebody who's been there and done that, who's built a business and scaled it past where you want to go, who understands the things that you don't understand? Wouldn't you like to have that person come and help you avoid the mistakes that you are going to make because you don't know what you're doing? And if you bring that person in, your chances of success go astronomically up.
This is fantastic advice. Dan and I share, if you look at my offshoring business, Get Leverage, in my demo experience page, I actually use his book, Buy Back Your Time.
Yeah.
The replacement ladder is a lot of times the centerpiece to a conversation to founders I use right away. Basically, you have 2 paths of founders that come to us. They have a very specific need around a go-to-market challenge. They know where the bottleneck is, and I can guide them to solving that problem. The other half are founders that know they have resourcing problems, bottlenecks. They just don't even know where to start. And that replacement ladder, and this is kind of maybe a plug to Dan's, what Dan had created, is there's an order of operations in which you need to remove yourself from, we call $5 an hour tasks, then moving towards what you call the $20 an hour tasks and so forth. Do you mind if we click into number 3, financial metrics? And there's maybe disparate information out in the market, but in your opinion, if you're a company between $500,000 to $10 million, what are these core metrics that you review and that you expect the financial acumen and understanding of those founders to be really strong on those core metrics? Otherwise, go back to zero or go back to go in Monopoly and start all over again. If you don't understand these, there's no way you're going to be able to scale your business.
Well, one of the big ones is sales and marketing. And too many people think sales and marketing are standalone entities, and they're really different sides of the same coin, right? Sales can't succeed unless marketing drives the right lead flow. Marketing can't succeed unless sales is able to execute or return an ROAS, return on advertising spend, on the marketing dollar spent. So they are one and the same, and too many people split them up. Now, too many people on the marketing side, and I'll give you a real live example. I did an analysis for a company in the construction industry, and they had 30 marketing channels. It's different places they put advertising, whether it was Microsoft or Bing or shows or Valve, whatever they did. They had 30 different channels. And we analyzed all those channels against the actual sales, which is how much the lead cost to generate, how much revenue it generated, what was the close rate on it, what was the profit per lead. We found out that 11 of their 30 channels were non-profitable. And if we simply took the money spent on those 11 channels, which was 40% of their marketing spend, and shut it down and flipped it to the profitable channels, they would generate an extra 20% in revenue with zero extra dollars spent. And the profit margin, by the way, on ancillary sales on top of what you're already doing is astronomical, as we know, because there are fixed expenses in every business that aren't going to go up. So once you've overcome the fixed, if your sales go up, your profit margin doubles. And so we added $500,000 in revenue literally in the first 2 weeks by simply transferring money that was already being spent into profitable channels. That is a data analysis point that most entrepreneurs don't understand. They think more marketing is more sales, and it's not. Just like they think more salespeople equals more sales. And when we go in, we do what's called a P&L analysis per salesperson. Every salesperson in an organization has their own personal P&L, which is fixed cost divided by salespeople, tack on their salary and commissions and lead costs. And we find in every single situation I've ever been in, the bottom 20% of your salespeople and maybe 30% are not profitable.
Yeah,
they're costing you money to be there, which means you can literally take the lead flow, move it from the non-profitable to a profitable. And once again, revenue goes up, profit goes up, less people, more money, everybody wins. But this is detailed financial analysis that you have to get into. You know how many times I've heard, Jamie, well, I'm not really good with numbers. Well, you either better get good with numbers or you better bring somebody in who is.
Pay somebody to be good.
In fact, I say this, and you may or may not. I ask people, what business are you in? Oh, I sell such and such, or I'm in this business. And I say, no, you're not. If you're 10 million in revenue, you're in the data business. Data is what you do. Data is what you analyze, and data will change your future, whether it's positive or negative. What you sell is a product. What you do is analyze data. Tell me that Apple is in the phone business. They're in the data business, man. Google is in the algorithm business. Facebook is in the algorithm business. They got fancy we can put our pictures up online, but dude, they're in the data business. That's what they do.
This is what myself as a founder, if you look on a spectrum of super skills versus, the acumen of a child, my financial acumen has always been the weakest part of my entrepreneurial journey. So I have to surround myself with mentors, bookkeepers, corporate accounting firms, financial analysts to help me interpret, because that's not my strength. Whereas I haven't had to surround myself with business development coaches, as an example, because that was more innate to my skill set. You reminded me of a book that I just wanted to give a shout out because, Brian, what you're talking about, I was recommended Greg Crabtree's book, Simple Numbers, or Simple Numbers 2.0. And you probably have it on your desk here. But
I don't, but I'm going to look that up as soon as we hang up.
What you just described, he talks about every single campaign, every single project, every single employee is measured against a return on invested capital.
Yes.
A metric for it. And you have to become ruthless of cutting campaigns, programs, initiatives if it doesn't hit these return on invested capital thresholds. And what you, as you're describing what you do and how you think, it really does align to Greg's book. Recognizing that we always do these short podcasts. If people wanted to get a hold of you and they're looking for a business coach on these 4 pillars, how do they get a hold of you?
brianwillmedia.com is my website, brianwillmedia.com. My latest book is called The Invisible Multimillionaire. It is primarily around the delegation process behind building, scaling, and exiting a company into private equity. Shout out to Dan. A lot of the stuff in the book is based on Dan's
Can I
training.
get it on Amazon?
Everything's on Amazon.
Yeah, I'm getting it.
Yeah, so you'll obviously recognize this: administrative, sales, marketing, and executive. These are the 4 levels of delegation we talk about. Again, shout out to Dan. I always tell people I'm not a genius. I just take all the good ideas and I combine them and package them my way. So
that's fantastic. Thank you so much for being on the show, and excited to hear how some of our listeners might be using your services. That's great.
Jamie, thank you very much. I appreciate it. I had a good time.
Thank you.